Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Burr. I'm currently the head of product marketing at Honey, and I'm excited to present to you all on the topic of, so you launched a product, now what? I wanted to present on this topic because I felt like overall post-launch doesn't get a lot of love. People of all functions tend to be so focused on product launches, the initial release of your product, that they often overlook the next steps. I've done a lot of launches, and post-launch, you have a lot of questions about your role, the product, everything. It's a really pivotal moment, and hopefully this presentation will bring some focus to that. I also hope this presentation can serve as a tool for pulling up the post-launch thought process. So even if you haven't launched a product yet, having a better understanding of these issues that you will face post-launch will make your launch and post-launch period that much better. So to get started, I wanted to point out where exactly in the product lifecycle phase this presentation will be helpful. You've launched or introduced your product and are about to embark on the next phase of growth or normal state for your product. Things you've accomplished include, but are not limited to, releasing your product to the public for the first time or opening it up to a wider audience. You now have acquired customers. Congratulations. You've launched a marketing campaign to get these customers, and your product is being promoted for the first time or at a wider scale. Therefore, you have a marketing spend that you started to accrue against, and you also have an overall financial plan that you're mapping against. A launch might be a day, a week, a few months. It depends on your business, but at some point, your acquisition efforts and your product are going to settle into a more regular mode. So launch is over, now what? You probably want to sleep, retire, find a new job, or launch a new product, but the truth is you're just getting to the fun part. Many have had successful launches, but it's what happens after the launch that I believe makes or breaks a product. So as that product introduction or launch period comes to an end, these are essentially the 2 main themes to look at in order to start off the next phase of your product marketing journey. Taking a look back at understanding your launch and prepping to keep moving forward. Breaking it down a level further, this presentation will focus on 4 key areas. In understanding your launch, it's first about checking your rearview mirror to better understand your initial KPIs from launch. And second, while it's important to understand the data, there are additional steps to take to truly understand who your customers are. So don't overlook that. Then in shifting to keep moving forward, this is about how to transition to an acquisition plus engagement model to make sure you aren't just bringing in users to a leaky bucket. And lastly, there are going to be a lot of things during launch and after that you identify that you'll need from your cross-functional teams in order to make marketing efficient. So here we go. First off, check your rearview mirror. There are lots of metrics to look at when you're launching a product, and different teams in your org are going to have different ones they focus on. For product marketers, what we tend to focus on can fall into two highly simplified buckets, quantity and quality. And I've outlined a few of the key metrics you'll likely want to focus on. Definitely not an all-inclusive, but hopefully help serve as a starting point. While the metrics you're looking at are important, how you're looking at them is just as important. So I wanted to outline a few steps to help evaluate these KPIs. First off, make sure you're checking your KPIs both during your launch period as well as immediately after. Making sure you're up on the trends of your launch are crucial to launching the next phase of your product cycle. It's also important to understand how to measure these KPIs. During launch, for example, are you looking at daily installs? But then post-launch, does it make sense to look at everything weekly or cumulatively given your forecasting? Consider different options. This can allow you to then go and look at the deltas between what actually happened during launch and what you forecasted. Identify where you're over or under, or just flat out seeing new or different things. Following that, you can match this data up against your hypotheses or questions you had going into launch. Make sure to also add new hypotheses or questions as you close these launch phase ones out. And lastly, and probably most important, align and prioritize what metrics you want to focus on, good or bad. Sure, everyone is probably going to say we need to work on everything, but you can figure out your own story to tell. For example, what I like about looking at your metrics as both quantity and quality focused is that you can weigh the ups and downs of both and ultimately determine where the real issues are that you need to address. All in all, it is important for product marketing to have a seat at the analytics table. Take ownership of certain KPIs, work through these steps, and ultimately your findings and actions can serve as a propulsion from new launch to existing long-standing product. Next up, know your customers. Really know them. So while data tells one part of the story, it remains important to check in on the other elements of your customer behavior. We never want to assume or take for granted that our acquisition efforts were 100% effective in only acquiring the types of users that we expected. So here I've tried to outline a bunch of different questions that you can ask to really start to understand who your customers are. Those who come in during your launch period are often referred to as your early adopters. They are, after all, those who first started using the product. And like I do with any audience, try to personify them. Making them human and relatable can help teams really feel like they're connecting with those using their product. If this audience turns out to be who you thought it would be, that's excellent. Now you need to understand the penetration you've had with that group and who the next target audiences are that you can think about expanding to. It's very rare that a product can exist entirely off of the adoption of one audience, so be prepared to target many. However, As can frequently happen, your early adopters look a little bit different than maybe what you expected. Spoiler alert, this could be okay. After you've personified this group or groups within your early audience, try and diagnose what could have caused that. This next question can certainly help with that. In addition to looking at your acquisition metrics, take it to another level and really understand the marketing channels that your new users are coming from. Depending on which marketing channels were successful for your launch, could have an impact on the types of customers you acquired. It's important within your channel strategy to define what success looks like for each one and your overall marketing mix. This can then allow you to explore where you can lean in more and where you want to go next. Lastly, work with your product team or user research team to really understand how your customers are using the product. I like to know where the highest levels of engagement are coming from, since that can help serve as additional or new value props to test in your marketing. But it's also important to know where you have some friction or drop-off points or different use cases in general. All of that information can help better inform you and your marketing strategies going forward. I also want to remind everyone that at the end of the day, we have living, breathing customers. The data can only tell us so much, and immediately following a launch, it's such an important time to do a real check-in with those using your product. If you can, conduct research, including quant and qual interviews with your customers. Also read your reviews and ratings and read them often. It's important not only to diagnose sentiment, but catch bugs and learn what users really think. Lastly, make sure that your existing customer base has a way to drive new users in. Creating a viral or shareable element is the best free marketing that you can get. And it also serves as a metric to understand the quality of the existing user base that you have. Better customers tend to recommend more new customers. Let them do the work for you. With that, we can move on from understanding your launch, the data, and customer experiences you've garnered through it, and talk about keep moving forward. And to kick that off, we'll start with don't try to fill a leaky bucket. So shifting over to keep moving forward. Launches typically can be a period of extreme acquisition growth and spend, but they can also be a time when you're slowly laddering into it. No matter how your launch acquisition efforts go, but especially if they are ramped up, you want to make sure that you have the proper mechanisms to keep your customers engaged and retained. It's a waste of money to bring users into your product only to lose them shortly after. That's the leaky bucket. While there's a lot that you can work directly with your product team on to also ensure retention and revenue mechanics are in place, I'll highlight 3 of the most important marketing initiatives that you can focus on: CRM, social, and loyalty. Before you start any of these programs, CRM, social, or loyalty, it's important that you understand the user journeys. How are different segments of customers experiencing your product? Make sure you actually draw it or map it out, because this is when you're going to figure out the second key element to establishing a user engagement model, which are identifying your communication touch points. By understanding your user behaviors, you'll understand when and where it's key to message them, to drive revenue or to keep them retained. It's important to prioritize what messages and where, so that you're nudging your customer base along, not disrupting or spamming them. The wrong message at the wrong time can definitely have the least desired effect. We've all been hit with spammy feeling interstitials or push notifications. Properly outlining and understanding your user journey and all the touch points you have can help you create stronger messaging and avoid bad marketing pitfalls. Once you know how your users are interacting and where you can communicate to them, let's start putting together a CRM plan. This includes tactically how you reach them. Is this through push, email, within your existing product? And what are you going to say to them? Test this. Next up is making sure that you're also building a broader community through your social channels. Typically, CRM acts as a very one-way channel, but social communities allow room for discussion and different types of messaging. Make sure your product or your company, whichever makes the most sense, has a presence on the channels that feel authentic and resonate with your customer base. Social communities can do a lot to drive engagement for your product, even though it may not directly be tied to the everyday usage of your product. Lastly, where it makes sense, think about a loyalty program. Are there ways that you can reward customers for using your product? The smallest acknowledgement of even product anniversaries and daily usage can go a long way in keeping people as your customers. It can definitely seem daunting to think about all the different ways to interact with your customers, but even having the basics of these programs covered can go a long way in keeping your users from falling through the leaky bucket. Enter our last segment, make your demands known. In this section, I just wanted to acknowledge what often feels like the daily struggle of product marketing, which is making asks to all the cross-functional teams that we work with. Why I think this is important in this presentation is acknowledging the timing. Post-launch, you're just coming out of a critical period of the product life phase. Everyone is in a constant phase of learning, but it's also a pivotal time as you're kicking off the rest of the life of your product. For that reason, it should make for a good time to get additional resources. I wanted to call out the 4 areas that I typically see as having asks for immediately following a launch. The first is getting asks to the product team for their roadmap. Are there features that you need in the product to help with marketing, customer messaging, or things like virality? Now's your time to ask. Secondly, is potentially acknowledging the ask for new or additional marketing research. Presumably, you've done some prior to launching, but depending on what you've learned from your KPIs and customers, it might be time to dig in further. So now's your time to ask. Third is, of course, the inevitable budget discussion. Always important to have at a critical juncture of marketing, so now's your time to ask. And lastly, is the ask for any other additional resources. Do you need more headcount? Are there other tools that you and your team need? Now's your time to ask. So how do you make these asks known and effective? Of course, as we just discussed, timing is everything. And the timing cannot be better than these pivotal moments like post-launch. Additionally, though, having a well-informed ask will make your requests be seen as much more credible. Hopefully, answering many of the questions outlined in this deck, you'll have the data and resources you need to back up your requests. Show how your asks will benefit these areas of growth or solve specific problems that have come up during launch. Show the upside. I've also found it helpful, especially in product-forward organizations, to make your marketing asks the asks of the entire product team. Show how, if you get what you need, it will benefit the entire org or take problems off their plate. Showing the broad benefit that you and your team can bring is always a win. And lastly, product launches can make you feel like the shiny new penny. There's a lot of attention on you and the team, good or bad, and your product is top of mind for many, especially at the exec level. As you wind down from this time period and potentially other products wind up to the launch phase, it's important to continue to keep your post-launch work on the radar of many. Well, maybe it's a weekly Slack update, a monthly email roundup. Take the extra couple of minutes every so often to keep others informed about the health and wealth of your product. And with that, I hope that I have provided some structure, helpful questions, or affirmation about life after a product launch. If you have any questions or want to discuss further, please let me know. Thanks.